Today we're going to talk about the Ohio Supreme Court races. A lot of people don't know that a lot of states actually elect Supreme Court candidates to their state Supreme Court. We're not talking national Supreme Court. States have their own. But a lot of times, like in Ohio, you elect those people instead of them getting appointed. And it's actually, like, there are 3 Ohio Supreme Court races on the ballot this November, and it's probably the 3 most important things on the ballot. It potentially is the second, third, and fourth most important things on the ballot after issue 1, which we can definitely talk about because they're all interconnected, but truly cannot explain to you how important the Ohio Supreme Court races are, and so many people skip them because they don't know that they're supposed to be voting for the Supreme Court. They don't know anything about the state Supreme Court. They don't know what it does. But I can't express to you how important the Ohio Supreme Court races are this year. So these are the 3 people that we're talking about that we want, that I desperately need folks to vote for, and I will talk about why. This is Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. Like, I am asking people to write those names down and take them into the ballot with you when you go to vote. You can have something, this is another legal thing people often don't know in Ohio, you can absolutely have your sample ballot with you in your hand while you vote. You can have notes you wrote to yourself. You can have your cell phone up. You can literally Google people while you're standing there at the poll if you want to. That is completely legal. The only thing that's not legal in Ohio is that you can't take a photo of your ballot. People do it. You're not supposed to, but you're absolutely allowed to have your phone out, your notes that you took with you. So write these names down. Write them down. Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. Literally the 3 most important people on your ballot in Ohio. And so I'm going to talk about why. Because a lot of people skip the Supreme Court races. One of the big things about Ohio this year is that we are operated by a supermajority of one party in Ohio. I give presentations in a lot of rooms. I don't care which party you are. Supermajorities are bad. For anyone having a supermajority from any party is bad, because it means that we lose out on those like checks and balances that we learned about in junior high that you're supposed to have. In Ohio, there's no one at any point in the process who can step in when the legislature passes something and say, hey, that's not wise, that's not legal, that's not constitutional. We don't have that right now, which is how we've ended up with a lot of the problems we have. Like, for example, the issue 1 ballot language that you see when you go to vote is going to be illegally written. It's going to be written to favor one side or the other, which is not legal. But we don't have anyone on our state Supreme Court right now who it can step in and create that check and balance and force people to follow the Constitution. So the issue 1 ballot language is illegal right now in Ohio because of the state Supreme Court. But there are so many, so again, just going to keep doing this. Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, write those down. But there are so many issues in Ohio that can be changed by who is on the Ohio Supreme Court because there are 3 seats up this year. 2 incumbents running for re-election and 1 new seat. And if the Democrats, if these 3 people win the Ohio Supreme Court races, they will flip the balance of power on the Ohio Supreme Court, which is massive because, again, don't care which party you are. If the Democrats win the Ohio Supreme Court, then we have a Republican supermajority in the legislature. We have a Republican governor, and we have progressive judges on the Supreme Court. And so they can balance each other out. They can go back and forth with each other. They can force each other to follow the law because they know there's going to be a step along the way where somebody's going to disagree. It really creates a requirement of either bipartisanship or at least like rule following because they know that they're not just going to sail smoothly through the process. There's going to be someone along the way who disagrees with them. Checks and balances, we learned about them in junior high. Ohio does not currently have them. So flipping the balance of power on the Ohio Supreme Court by electing these 3 people, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, I'm going to keep saying it because being repetitive is key in politics and in advertising. If those 3 people win the Ohio Supreme Court seats this November, we bring back a balance of power in Ohio. We bring back checks and balances. It is unbelievably important. If you care about democracy, if you care about government transparency, if you think that politicians are corrupt, the way they get to be corrupt is when nobody stops them because they have all the power in all the branches of government. That is the problem. We can fix that this year by electing Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. But there's also a ton of cases that are going to get to the Ohio Supreme Court next year and in the year after, when the next round of Supreme Court justices are on the bench, that will literally impact every aspect of Ohioans' lives. So a big one is abortion rights. You all know, if you live in Ohio or if you live anywhere near Ohio, you know that we voted last year in big numbers to enshrine abortion rights in our state. We are in a place now where abortion rights are in our state constitution, but all the abortion bans that were previously in place, I'm just going to keep showing you their names, all the bans that were previously in place, they don't just automatically go away. What happens is that politicians are supposed to then do the process of removing them because they're no longer constitutional. But the legislature, who didn't want issue 1 to pass last year, the Abortion Rights Amendment, they're fighting in court to try and keep those bans in place, even though all of you voted to legalize abortion rights in our state. Those cases are going to get to the Ohio Supreme Court next year. If Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes are on the bench, all of the things you all voted for to allow women to have reproductive freedom will happen, because they have pledged that they will follow the constitutional amendment that Ohioans voted in. They will strike down the abortion bans that we currently have because they no longer reflect our state constitution. The other 3 people running for justice in Ohio, the people running against these 3, have not made that pledge. They are expected to make it difficult to strike down bans on abortion in Ohio next year if they're still on the bench, or if they're on the bench, even though they are blatantly unconstitutional. So abortion rights are on the ballot in Ohio, and a lot of people don't know that. Because abortion is illegal in Ohio in our state, or abortion rights are legal in Ohio in our state constitution right now. But there are people trying to keep the current bans in place, keep the laws from being struck down. It's going to get to the state Supreme Court. So who you vote for the Ohio Supreme Court is absolutely going to be the deciding factor in whether or not we have abortion rights, women's rights in our state next year. So write these names down. If you care about abortion rights, if you support women's reproductive freedom, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes are the 3 most important people on the ballot for you. If you care about public schools and funding public schools, that is going to be another issue that gets to our state Supreme Court next year. There's a massive lawsuit going through the courts right now. So Ohio has just recently passed universal vouchers in our state, and they're trying to even expand beyond universal vouchers, as is in Project 2025, fun fact. And there is a lawsuit from a whole bunch of the, literally hundreds of Ohio's public school districts. Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, vote for them. There is a lawsuit from all these public school districts saying, basically, we can't afford to function. We cannot afford to take care of 90% of Ohio's children who still go to public schools, because Ohio's universal voucher system takes money directly from the same pot of money that goes to the public schools and pushes it over to the voucher system. So there's a lawsuit called Vouchers Hurt Ohio. You can Google it. They have got their own website and everything. That Vouchers Hurt Ohio lawsuit is likely going to get to the Ohio Supreme Court next year. So the future of Ohio's public school system is on the ballot this year. If you care about that, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes have pledged to uphold Ohio's public school system, keep it funded enough to function, basic stuff. The other 3 have not pledged that. So we have 3 judges who are running. 2 of them are currently justices, 2 of them are running for re-election, and then 1 of them is running to be on the bench, who have pledged to uphold the Constitution, who have pledged to look at Ohio laws and uphold them. And Ohioans vote for things like public education funding, and they vote for things like library funding, and they vote for things like abortion rights and legal marijuana, and all of these things that people support that are not supported by the legislature. These judges have promised to uphold those Ohioans' values, essentially, or uphold the law, basic stuff. The other 3 judges are much more aligned with keeping the legislature in power and doing what the legislature wants and what their party wants. And so we can expect that the school districts would likely lose that lawsuit next year if the Ohio Supreme Court does not flip. There are a ton of cases. There's actually, okay, so I'm seeing this in the chat too. So Ohio Supreme Court Republican majority actually got some national and international fame earlier this year. They went viral because we had a guy, it was a really sad story actually. This guy in Ohio went to a restaurant, ordered boneless chicken wings, ate the boneless chicken wings, and he swallowed a bone because there was a bone in his boneless chicken wings, and it nearly killed him. We're talking, this dude had multiple surgeries because it got stuck and they had to remove it. It was like hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of surgeries and like medical costs. It was like a big problem for this guy. And he sued because boneless chicken wings, the word boneless implies boneless, and the majority on the Ohio Supreme Court sided with the businesses and ruled that in Ohio, boneless chicken wings, boneless chicken wings cannot be expected to be without bones. So there was all these headlines that were literally like, Ohio Supreme Court rules that boneless chicken wings can have bones, which means that if you, and these two of these people who are currently on the bench adamantly, loudly disagreed with that decision because words should have meaning. And so, yeah, if you believe that words should have meaning, if you think that there should not be people siding with businesses and corporations and saying that, you know, words don't have meaning if the company would lose out, that people have to assume that boneless chicken wings have bones in them, we need to change the balance of power on the Supreme Court. We need to vote people in who support, I can't even say this properly, who believe in basic words having meaning. Another example of that, again, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. It's literally whether or not you think words should have meaning. That's actually the best way to describe it, because we are dealing with the same thing right now with the issue 1 fight in Ohio. So if you haven't heard, issue 1 on Ohio's ballot this November would, if it passes, a yes on issue 1, would ban all politicians and lobbyists from Ohio's redistricting process, which is a huge deal. It would make it so that people draw the district lines instead of politicians drawing the district lines, because when politicians draw their own lines, they pick people to put in their districts who are going to vote for them, and then it's impossible to vote them out ever again. It's how you end up with really extreme people in the legislature and in Congress, because they can't ever be voted out. So voting yes on issue 1 is one of the most important things you could do this November. But obviously, the politicians are nervous about issue 1. They hate it because it would mean they lose their power to draw their lines. It means they would have to be afraid to potentially lose their seat in November, that they would have to be accountable to voters, that if they pass things nobody likes, vote for these people. If they pass things nobody likes, they could be voted out of office. Politicians are begging you to vote no on issue 1. Anyone in Ohio who votes no on issue 1 who's not a politician or lobbyist has been tricked by the politicians. That is just me being blunt. Every Ohioan should be voting yes on issue 1. There is really no reason not to. It's not partisan. It's Republicans and Democrats and independents. It's everybody versus the politicians and lobbyists and people who've been tricked by them. So don't be tricked. Vote yes on issue 1. But the politicians, again, are terrified of issue 1. And they are trying literally everything they can think of to trick you in voting no. One of the things they've done, which is illegal and especially disgusting, is politicians control Ohio's ballot board, which is supposed to be nonpartisan. Basically what they do is they, when you get something on the ballot, like when citizens collect a lot of signatures and put something on the ballot, the ballot board approves it, and they put description language on the ballot. Like when you go in, there's a paragraph describing what the issue is. And it's supposed to be, legally, under Ohio law, the description is supposed to be a nonpartisan explainer of what the amendment would or would not do. And vote for these 3 people. I'm just going to keep doing that. So the ballot board is controlled by politicians who don't want issue 1 to pass because they don't want to lose their power. So they wrote a ballot description that is completely false. And by completely false, I literally mean, like, look it up. It's wild. They openly lied about what issue 1 would do. They flipped the language in there. So issue 1 would ban politicians and lobbyists from Ohio's redistricting process. It would ban gerrymandering. It openly said, like, it directly says, I have a very, very thorough description of it here, and the words up themselves. It would ban gerrymandering. It would ban rigging Ohio's district lines to support one party or another. It would ban rigging the lines to help one elected politician or help someone get elected. All of that's written in. It's unbelievable. It makes me so mad just to talk about it. The ballot board politicians wrote a description on the official ballot language that you're going to see when you go in to vote that says that the Citizen Commission drawing Ohio's lines, if issue 1 passes, would be required to gerrymander the maps. It is a literal lie. It is the exact opposite of the truth. So people sued, right? Because that's insane and completely illegal, absolutely blatantly illegal, because Ohio law says the description on the ballot has to be nonpartisan. It went to the Ohio Supreme Court, and Ohio's current Supreme Court majority, because they are politicians too who align with the legislature politicians, they ruled that the word gerrymandering could potentially also mean draw, which is, again, just like, it's like that scene in Zoolander where he's like, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. It is so illegal. It is just like blatantly, openly illegal. But we don't have checks and balances in Ohio. We don't have a balance of power of any capacity. We have one supermajority party who does literally everything, and no one ever has a chance to step in and tell them that something they're doing is illegal or unconstitutional or morally wrong or scientifically impossible. Nothing. It's truly remarkable. So if you believe, again, that words should have meaning, that gerrymander cannot mean draw, that boneless cannot mean has bones, you have to flip the balance of power in the Ohio Supreme Court. We have to vote for Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. I cannot express to you how important this is. I literally can't. Words have meaning. That's why we have to vote for these 3 people. That is the absolute best way to describe it. So there's a lot of other pieces to this. I've got some other examples here too, because there are so many court cases that are going to get to Ohio Supreme Court next year that are going to impact so many things about Ohio. And a lot of them are issues that we all care about, that we're paying attention to at the national level, but people don't understand how we have so much power to impact these things in our own state level. Because a lot of people don't believe that we have, or like people don't understand how the legislature works, or they don't understand that we have a state Supreme Court that is elected. That feels like a thing that should be nonpartisan, right? Fun fact. Ohio's Supreme Court those races used to be nonpartisan because judges should be nonpartisan. That is common sense. And the politicians in the legislature, it's a Republican supermajority. And when I say Republican, I'm not talking about like regular people. I'm not talking about like like Republicans who vote based on like taxes or like small government. I'm talking like extreme right MAGA Republicans. Like there are like Project 2025 Republicans. There are bills in the Ohio legislature that would blow people's minds if they knew about them. There's 2 bills in the Ohio legislature right now that attack librarians. There's one that would put librarians and teachers in prison. Like literally we're talking felony convictions because they for giving children books that somebody accuses them of being like inappropriate books. But it doesn't define like what inappropriate is. It doesn't define what like the material would be that would get them these felony convictions, because the whole point is to attack librarians and education and books and children reading. There's another bill and these are parts of Project 2025. There's another bill in the legislature that would defund libraries if they don't hide books well enough that people think that the politicians and government decide are not worthy of children reading them. It doesn't define what the government would say those books are, but if you get caught not hiding these books properly, your local library could be just fully defunded. We're not talking about normal Republicans in the Ohio legislature. We're talking about the most extreme people to exist and they are running Ohio state legislature right now. And they are the ones with all of the power. And so the only thing that they could possibly do to prevent nonpartisan people from voting decent human beings onto the Ohio Supreme Court was to make the Ohio Supreme Court races partisan. So now when you go in to vote, there's going to be a D or an R next to the judges' names, which is so unfair to all people because it requires the judge candidates to then run with a party. It requires them to like show up to Democratic or Republican Party events, which makes them look partisan. And it's so unfair to them because these judges do not want to be partisan. I know personally 2 of these individuals, and they are wonderful people, all 3 of them. I've seen the other one speak, and she's like so impressive. They are all angry about the fact that they have to go to Democratic Party events and appear to be partisan because all they want to do is interpret the law, and all they want to do is rule that things that are in Ohio's Constitution have to be followed, like basic stuff. But because the very, very far right folks in the legislature made the races partisan, the only way they have any chance of winning is to run with the party ticket. It's so unfair. But the reason the legislature did that was because people who have progressive values were winning Ohio Supreme Court races. And so they're like, well, if we just make it partisan and then we tell everyone that all Democrats are evil, we will win the Ohio Supreme Court races. And it's gross, and it is not how any of us should be thinking. Our judges should not be partisan. They shouldn't be forced to be partisan. These 3 people believe that. It's one of my favorite things about them. They don't want to be partisan. They want to follow the law. And so the only way, the literal only way, I don't care which party you are, do not care. The only way to create a balance of power of any kind in Ohio, the only way to bring back checks and balances of any capacity is to vote for these 3 people, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, this November. They are going to be the 3 people immediately after the presidential race. So I just voted last week, telling you that for certain. So you're going to see, there's 6 people running for president in Ohio. I had not heard of 4 of them. But after that, there's going to be 3 Supreme Court races. They are in this order: Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. These are the people we need to vote for. If you believe in any kind of balance of power, if you believe in any kind of checks and balances, the thing we learned about in junior high, we have to elect these people. It is truly the most. After issue 1, which is the last thing on your ballot, fun fact. Well, there might be a local levy or something, but it's going to be after all the candidates. So you want to vote all the way down that ballot. You want to make sure to not skip races, but you want to get to the end because you want to vote yes on issue 1. But after issue 1, the 3 most important things on your ballot are these 3 individuals: Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. They're going to be immediately after the presidential race. So I'm new to TikTok Live, so bear with me while I am floundering here. I think there's a way for me to read the comments so I can answer them, and I would love to do that. So I'm going to attempt to do it right now. Yes. Okay. So one question I'm seeing is there's actually a couple bills in the legislature right now in Ohio that would make our school board races partisan as well. Because again, the very, very far right people on the Ohio Supreme Court decided that was the way they could win Supreme Court races. And so they also want to do that with your local school board races. They want to make it so only people who support one party or another in that community win school board races as well. School board races shouldn't be partisan. There should be people who believe in quality education for everyone, and those should be the people who are on the school boards. But yes, the answer to that question is those bills do still exist. They will still exist until the end of this calendar year. And so our goal is to stop them from passing before the end of this calendar year, because then they would die and have to be reintroduced. But at the moment, they still exist, and there is a very high likelihood that someone will try to bring them back up this November and December when the legislature is back. So that is very much still a thing. It's a strategy they've had for a while. Yes, absolutely. Voting yes on issue 1 should not be a partisan issue. Should be very easy for anyone who is not a politician. Vote for these 3 people. I'm gonna keep doing this. So issue 1 in Ohio, for anyone who wasn't on earlier, is It's an issue on your ballot this November. One sentence explainer is it would ban all politicians and lobbyists from Ohio's redistricting process. It would make it so that politicians can't draw their own lines anymore. The lines would be drawn by people, citizens who don't have a connection to the process, who don't have a motive to rig the district lines. Right now, Ohio's districts are drawn by politicians who have obviously a reason to want to stay in office. So they draw their lines and they often end up looking like this. They look ridiculous because what they're doing is they're picking the voters that they like. They're picking the people they know are going to vote for them so they can never lose again. That's called gerrymandering. So that's how politicians rig the system they get elected once and then they draw the line so they never get voted out of office ever again. That would be banned. Gerrymandering would be banned if issue 1 passes. So literally everyone, I don't care which party you are, I don't care if you want small government or big government, politicians should not be drawing their own district lines. That is basic. That is common sense stuff. So if you believe that, you should be voting yes on issue 1. The politicians are lying to us. They're scared. They don't want to lose their seat. Why would they? They don't want to have to pay attention to what Susie Q voter cares about. They want to do whatever they feel like. So they're trying to convince you as hard as they possibly can to vote no on issue 1. But I've been saying this to people. I'll say it again, very blunt. The only people voting for issue 1 or against issue 1, the only people voting no on issue 1 will be politicians, lobbyists, and people who've been tricked by politicians and lobbyists. If you're voting no and you're not a politician or lobbyist, you've been lied to. And if you haven't voted yet, there is still time. There's still time for you to do real research and look into it and then vote with people. I can give you several resources. I'll put them, check out my page. There's a ton of videos about issue 1, but I'll also put stuff in the comments. I went through and I read the entire issue 1 amendment, the actual language that would become law if Ohio ends up passing issue 1, which please pass issue 1. I read the entire thing. It's 26 pages long. It's very thorough because it has to be thorough. It's a process that has a lot of power to it. So people want to rig the process. That's reasonable too. When there is power, people want it. So the redistricting process, in order to make it fair and actually not able to be messed with, they had to make it complex. So it's 26 pages long. But of course, the politicians are using that to their advantage. They're like, oh, it's so complex. We know no one will read it, so we're just going to lie about what's in it. And that's their plan. So anyway, I read all of the amendment. I wrote down literally line by line, a human non-lawyer explanation of what each line says. And I put it into a document, and it's yesonone.info. So that's the website that links to, it's literally like a Google Doc. I'm not fancy. So it's yesonone.info, and it is a 26-page, or it's a clickable explainer of the 26-page amendment. It is a line-by-line breakdown of what issue 1 would do, but it's written for regular human beings, because it's not technical language. But yeah, you should go to that. And you should read about it, and you still have time. If you haven't voted yet, don't let the politicians trick you into voting no. Everyone should be voting yes. Let's see. What else we got here? Yes. Yeah. Somebody said, I am shocked that Trump hasn't put out his own dictionary yet. Yes, that really is. And Trump is who we hear about doing it, but it's happening. The scariest part to me is the people who do it at every other level of government. Trump doesn't scare me by himself. He's just an old man. He's an angry old man who says angry old man things. But the people who are scary to me are all the people in government at every level of government. We're talking Congress, we're talking state government, we're talking state legislatures, people at the local freaking city council and school board members who are doing what he wants, who are putting what he wants into place. Those are the people who scare me. I'm not scared of Donald Trump by himself. I'm scared of everybody who enables him. And those are the people we have to vote out of office. We have to vote down ballot, because if we don't, Donald Trump will go away, but they will remain. And then the entire extremism organization structure will remain. And so we have to vote down ballot. Nothing has ever been more important. That's why I'm on here today on my Saturday morning, I guess it's noon now, talking about Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes for Ohio Supreme Court. If Donald Trump wins or if he doesn't, if extremism wins or if it doesn't, even if like in 20 years, if the extremist party is the libertarians and they're the ones, or if the extremist party is the Green Party, or if the extremist party is the Democratic Party, what is going to matter is who you have in state government to interpret the law accurately. So it doesn't matter who your party is, and it sucks that these people have to have party labels next to them because they don't want to be partisan. They want to interpret the law. What we need is 3 human beings who have pledged to interpret the law the way it's written, who have pledged to believe that words have meaning, that boneless means boneless, and that redistricting and gerrymandering and draw are 3 different words. That's why I'm voting for these people. I'm not voting for them because of their party. I'm not voting for them because they are forced to show up to political party events. I am voting for Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes because I believe that words have meaning. And I believe that anyone who gets into a position of extreme power has the potential to be corrupted. And that's why state government is so important. State government is what can protect us, if we put the right people in place, from national people coming in and being extreme from every level. So Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, the 3 Supreme Court candidates in Ohio, we elect our Supreme Court justices. Rephrasing that, we elect our Supreme Court justices. If these 3 justices win, we will have 3 people in our state who will define our laws based on what the actual words in our laws say, and that will stop some stuff that is coming at us from the national level. One of the other things we're seeing a lot from the extremists at the national level right now is they're saying, send it all back to the states. And what by it all, I mean, there have been a couple members of Congress recently who have indicated that they would be okay sending things like interracial marriage back to the states, and LGBTQ marriage, and like basic stuff that we all thought was protected, civil rights. And so if they do that, if they actually send it back to the states, their plan is to have their people at the state level to then take away those freedoms at the state level. That's their plan. Anyone who doesn't believe that has not been in state government or paid attention to it, which is why we need these 3 people, Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes, in the Ohio Supreme Court, so that if, God forbid, the Congress, U.S. Congress, sends interracial marriage back to the states, these 3 Supreme Court justices will be like, obviously interracial marriage is protected in Ohio. That is so important. Every issue you care about, you need somebody in your state government who is going to protect your freedoms, who's going to read the law the way it's written, who is going to say when something is done unconstitutionally or illegally or harmfully to entire populations of people. These justices, I cannot explain how important this is. Holy crap. So important. Okay, so I'm going to keep going, keep reading through the comments here. I actually don't know if there's a better way to be reading through the comments. Again, this is my 2nd live ever. Really don't know what I'm doing, but it's so important that I'm here, and I'm going to talk to you until people stop listening. So if there's a better way for me to be reading through the comments, like if I should have them on my computer or something, let me know. I'm definitely open to learning how to do this. So let's see. Oh yeah, there's a lot of people in the comments who know who Frank LaRose is. Yeah, we can talk about him. So yeah, no, that's fair too. Okay, we'll get to that. So Ohio has a lot of people in it who are problematic. And by people, I mean politicians. The people are lovely. I love my state. Born and raised here. I love Ohio. It has become my entire career, and not because it pays, because it doesn't. It has become my career because these are my people. This is my community. And they deserve so much better than the politicians who are running the state right now. This is why we have to vote for Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. See how I keep doing that. So there is one individual politician in Ohio who many of you seem to know in the comments, who is by far one of the worst politicians I've ever seen. But by worst, I mean cruelest and most power hungry. He is incredibly dangerous. And he happens to be the individual who runs our elections, which is, problematic. So his name is Frank LaRose. He was a state senator for a long time, so I've been around him for a while. He comes off when he talks as moderate, and he attempts to do that on purpose. He's young. He tries to come off as he's got JD Vance vibes, y'all. But then he turns around and he does things like the most egregious things I have ever seen a politician do, and I've been in this for a while. He, for example, recently, this month, has now won a case to make it very difficult for Ohioans to return the absentee ballots of disabled family members. Yes, you heard that right. Ohio has, because of Frank LaRose, we only have one absentee ballot drop box per county. Doesn't matter how big the county is, how long you have to drive across it to get to your county drop box. Doesn't matter how many people we have in the county, how many buses you have to take across the county to get to your ballot drop box. We only have one per county because of Frank LaRose. He has recently said that even that is not acceptable, that the each drop box is only outside of the county board of elections. They are monitored 24/7 with heavy duty cameras so that nobody can do this fake voter fraud that everyone says is happening. And he says that even that is too much, that the one ballot drop box per county outside your county board of elections monitored by cameras can still be messed with. And the way it's being messed with is that people with disabled relatives are they're saying, hey, grandma, I'll take your ballot for you. Thank you for filling it out. I know you have trouble walking. I will take your ballot for you to the ballot drop box. He's saying that people, while taking grandma's ballot to the drop box, are also taking hundreds of other secret fake ballots that they invented that are somehow not going to be caught by the rest of the process. And so that they're going to the drop boxes and they're throwing in hundreds of ballots. It's outrageous, right? Anyone who listens to this who has not been fully brainwashed is not going to believe it. But this dude's in a position of power. So he tells us that this is happening and that he must prevent it, that he alone is the man who's going to prevent Ohio's elections from being rigged. Also happens to be the guy running the elections. And so please vote for these people. So important. Oh my God. Everything I'm talking about will be improved if we vote for these 3 Supreme Court justices who will create any kind of balance of power, because we don't have one currently in Ohio. So he says that, people are dropping off these hundreds of fake ballots, and that for some reason, the people who collect, the officials who collect all of the ballots at the end of the day, each day, are not going to be look at all these fake ballots that came in with that one lady's grandma's ballot. I think I'll just let these through and let them become votes. None of it makes sense. It does not make sense. But Frank LaRose runs Ohio's elections. So he gets to say it makes sense and that he's going to do something about it. So what he's been trying to do recently is he made a ruling, essentially. It's a directive that the only people allowed to use the ballot drop boxes are the people dropping off their own ballot. That nobody is allowed to put grandma or right now, my brother was in a very bad motorcycle accident. He's going to be fine, thank goodness. But he is, for the foreseeable future, not able to walk. He is in a wheelchair, and it's very hard to get him around. And I'm going to help him vote this year. He very much knows who he wants to vote for. He's filling out the ballot. He filled out the ballot request. He's going to write everything that he wants to vote for. The only thing he wanted to do was hand ballot to me so I could take the ballot to the drop box and put it in for him. And now I'm not going to be able to do that because Frank LaRose decided that that was opportunity for fraud. So what his directive was that you can only put your own ballot in the drop box. That if you want to take a relative's ballot, a disabled person relative's ballot to the drop box, you have to, instead of using the super easy, readily accessible drop box that's hanging out outside the ballot or the county board of elections, you have to go inside the county board of elections and you have to be treated like a criminal where you fill out a legal form attesting that you are not violating the law, that it's actually their ballot, that you're only turning in the one ballot. I haven't had to do it yet. I'll let you know what it's like when I go. But the problem with this, so like that sucks, right? It's like mean and it's unnecessary and it's like a hassle and people are going to be like, well, I have to take more time. What if I have to wait in line? The big thing about it though is that the whole purpose of the drop box is so that you can drop off your ballot at any time, night or day, because we all have lives. We have kids and families and jobs and bills to pay and like stuff to do. And so the drop box is there to drop off a ballot. Like if you work a night shift and you're heading in at 11 p.m., you should be able to drop off your ballot. This makes it so that you could only drop off your disabled loved one's ballot during work hours. And you have to be able to have the time to go in, potentially wait in line, and fill out the form promising you're not secretly bringing hundreds of other ballots with grandma's ballot. Frank LaRose is a bad person. No one, like, there's no other way around it. It's first of all, definitely violating, like, ADA regulations. But, and here's where we get back to the Ohio Supreme Court. Frank LaRose got sued, as he should have been. He got sued for this ridiculous anti-disabled Ohioans bill. He got sued. And so it went to the Ohio Supreme Court, where the current majority on the Ohio Supreme Court was like, that's fine. Do whatever you want, Frank. Because there's no checks and balances. So we have to change the balance of power on the Ohio Supreme Court. We have to create a system where there is some form of government, someone in the government in Ohio, who can tell people like Frank LaRose that they are openly violating the law. That's why I am here on my Saturday with these people's faces and names in front of me, because that's how important this is. They have to win. Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes have to win. They have to, because the other outcome is we end up in a state where people like Frank LaRose can take away disabled Ohioans' rights, and there is no recourse. There is no holding them accountable because the Supreme Court lets them do whatever they want. Sound familiar? If you pay attention to national politics, does that sound familiar? It's happening here too. So we have to vote for Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. I don't care which party you are. I do not care. I don't care if you vote for every single Republican on the ballot except for the Supreme Court. And the reason, the way you'd be doing that, the reason you'd be doing that is because we need checks and balances for functioning society. I don't care. Vote for Donald Trump. Vote for Bernie Moreno. Don't vote for Bernie Moreno. He's a bad guy too. But if you vote Republican all the way down and you vote for the 3 Supreme Court justices who believe that words have meaning, who believe that boneless means boneless and gerrymandering does not mean draw, and that drop boxes should be available for the purpose in which they literally exist, you have to vote for these 3 people. Donnelly, Stewart, and Forbes. It's not a party thing. It shouldn't have to be a party thing. All right, let's look through some of these comments here. I'm going to have to go fairly soon. Ooh, let's see if I can do a poll. I would love to know if you all have thoughts on what I should do next. So let's see. Quick poll. Oh, if this works, I'm going to be very excited. Nope. Okay, so I'm going to figure out how to do the poll. But while I'm talking, trying to figure out how to do the poll. Again, this is my second live ever. I'm only doing this because of how important it is. I'm very uncomfortable with it, but hopefully it's going all right. So there has to be a way to do a poll. If you know how to do it, let me know. So one of the other things in the questions, the comments, was that if we had fair maps, J.D. Vance wouldn't have won against Tim Ryan. And I think that is a crucially important thing to bring up. A lot of times you will hear, please vote for these people, gonna keep doing this. A lot of times you will hear individuals say that gerrymandering only impacts the districts it directly impacts. So it only impacts Congress and the state legislature, and that you can't gerrymander a statewide map. That is only technically true. It's not true if you understand politics. So the thing about gerrymandering is that it makes it so that one party always wins, right? That's the whole point of it. And if somebody gerrymanders long enough, their party will win all the time, and it becomes clear that that party's always going to win. So people who work in the state, who have to give money in the state to try and keep like their union or their issue alive, will donate to the winners, because obviously you want to be friends with the people in power. And if everybody knows who's going to be in power because the lines are rigged, that party is going to stay in power because they're going to get all the donations. They're going to get all the money. They're going to get all the institutional support because people want to be friends with the people in power. So gerrymandered lines mean that Ohio's Republican Party, which again, not normal Republicans, we're talking far right Republicans, they always have more money. They always start out with an extreme cash advantage, which means that they get to spend all their money on messaging. They get to go on TV earlier and longer and more often. They get to go on digital ads and radio ads and constantly be in our heads with these messages that get to people eventually. Repetition really is crucial. And so if like gerrymandered states lead to messaging, money advantages, which leads to messaging advantages, which helps turn a state red or blue based on how it's gerrymandered. So it is absolutely true, like 100,000,000% true, that Tim Ryan would have beaten J.D. Vance in Ohio, because Ohio is filled with good, reasonable human beings who have been messaged at with extreme cash advantages for so long. J.D. Vance would have lost to Tim Ryan. He would have. And it is gerrymandering that leads us there. Even though you can't gerrymander a state map, that has nothing to do with it. It is about the long-term game. So thank you for putting that in the comments. All right, I'm going to do one more question, and then I am sad that I can't figure out how to do this poll, but I will figure it out, because I'm going to have to do a third live, and maybe a fourth. We will see. Please vote for these people. Please vote for them. So I'm going to take one more question, and then I will, like, send me a message or, like, put in the comments what you think I should talk about next time, and I will gladly do it, because I can't figure out how to do a poll. All right, let's see. All right. Cute. Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, okay, so the pumpkin pie example. Yeah, so people have been asking about the pumpkin pie example for gerrymandering. It's my favorite example. There's a video about it on my page if you go there. So the people have trouble understanding, because gerrymandering is a weird word, and district drawing is very, like, in the weeds, policy heavy stuff. So one of the ways that I explain to people, and I did not come up with this, it's been a meme on the internet that I stole and have used, and it's wonderful, and shout out to whoever came up with it. But imagine that you come to Thanksgiving with a pie, and then you put the pie down and you ask your uncle to carve the pie, or like give himself a piece of pie, or like cut a piece of pie, whatever normal ass thing you'd say to him. And he takes the knife and he cuts like a huge slice of pie for himself out the middle, so that everybody else's pie piece is going to be messed up and like mostly crust. Like, what is that? Why would your uncle do that? Your reaction to that would be, next time you bring a pie, Uncle John does not get to carve the pie or cut the pie, because he did it weird last time and he messed with all the other pieces of pie and he took only the parts he liked for himself. He wouldn't get to cut the pie again. Like, that's basic stuff, right? And that is what gerrymandering is. Politicians draw their own district lines, they cut their own piece of pie, and they mess up everybody else's piece of pie, because they're only taking the people that they want. They're only taking the part of the pie that they like and leaving the rest for everybody else. And it is, the reasonable thing to do is somebody else cuts the pie next time. That's what issue 1 does. Voting yes on issue 1 would ban politicians and lobbyists from drawing their own district maps, from cutting their own pieces of pie. It's the best way I found to describe it. It really has a good visual with it. Recommend going to my page and watching that video, because it's a fun video. Yeah, so that is the explanation of the pie thing, and feel free to use that find the memes. It's wonderful. It really helps, I think, people understand what is a very common sense issue, but sounds very complicated. Words matter. Yes, you're all amazing. All right, cool. So this has been fun. Thank you all for doing this with me. I will figure out how to do a poll. I'll figure out more things in the future, I promise. Send me a message or write in the comments, because I'm going to keep this live up for a while. Pull pieces from it. Send me a message if there's stuff you want me to talk about next time. If there's like something in Ohio politics or in national politics. Hell, I can talk about national politics. I really love down ballot races though. Presidency. Like Donald Trump by himself doesn't scare me. The people who support him scare me. That's the truth for every party. The people at the top don't scare me. It's the people at the bottom who have all the actual power. So happy to talk about any of that stuff. Like, let me know what would be interesting, or questions you have, or questions that a lot of people in your community have. We have a lot of new voting laws in Ohio, and that sucks, and we should all know about them, and it's going to end up that some people get turned away from the ballot because they don't know about the laws. But yeah, so here we are. Let me know, and I'll do this again. At least I found a thing that like holds us up, so I don't have to hold it up the whole time. Step 2, real good. And thanks, and I hope you all vote. Election day is November 5th. Vote.gov if you're national. VoteOhio.gov if you are Ohio. And now I just have to figure out how to turn this thing off.